Before daybreak in Tenby, with our long-time friends John and Val, saw us with an eye to the weather embarking on a boat trip to Caldy Island on the first full day there. Some of us possibly were not the world's greatest sailors. Today is pretty calm, and as we head past Tenby's new lifeboat house, well, new in 2005, but considering there's been a lifeboat station here since 1852, it is relatively new. It houses Tenby's two lifeboats, a Tamer class all-weather lifeboat and a D-class inshore one. Looking at their website, there are frequent call-outs from yachts on rocks to missing holidaymakers up and down quite a large stretch of the beach. A 20-minute ride sees Caldy Island approaching. Caldy is one of Britain's holy islands, with a monastic history going back some 1500 years. But it's not just history here, it is a thriving monastic life. The bell still rings for vigils and cupline, we're informed, and monks still live quietly under the red pinnacled roofs of the monastery. Caldy, though, is more than an island with a monastery. There's a post office, tea gardens, museum, gift shop of course, and the perfume shop. The perfume was originally made on the island back in the 1950s, but demand soon outstretched production and it was moved to the mainland. It is now one of the island's main sources of income. I should say that although the essential oils are produced on the mainland, the final product is made in the Caldy perfumery on the island. St David's Church here, on a small hill just outside of the village, dates from Norman times, but the foundations and possibly some of the stonework of the nave are thought to be those of a Celtic chapel built in the 6th century. The simple wooden crosses mark the graves of monks and islanders, as St David's is the parish church of the island. By the monk, I think. The monks on the island belong to the order of Reformed Cistercians and follow strict lifestyle of their order. This life starts at 3:15 in the morning and follows a program of vigils, prayer, work, and eventually a period of silence from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Of course, chastity, poverty and obedience are taken as read.
Dawlish got black swans. Here they are.
Farming is alive and well on Cody, although it is now mainly beef cattle that are farmed, not because of the inability of the 450 acres of fertile land to support dairy farming, but because of the unpredictability of the weather that any tanker or boat carrier would have to brave, taking into account tides and storms, such like. The island can also boast a chocolate factory, old priory and a lighthouse. So tourism is the mainstay of the island now, with thousands taking the 20-minute boat ride out of Tenby each summer.
Oh, I think you just have.
And with not only many interesting churches and buildings to see, the island's gentle walks are well worth the visit alone. If the churches and monasteries or even the walking doesn't convince you to visit, I think the method of leaving when the tide is out will clinch it. This old Leviathan seems to be a relic of some far distant time, but it's just a job for ferrying us to deeper waters, and in some cases bring visitors in as well. At least we're not under fire. Back on dry land again, at least for today anyway, Tenby's roots go back to the Normans, when much of the medieval walls that still survive today were built to fortify against Welsh rebellion. The narrow streets and alleyways of Tenby, and a tea or beer while people watching, is an ideal way to finish the day. Today the weather, as predicted, is taking a turn for the worse. Heavy rain and mist, so we head out in the car and take a light lunch in a most unusual pub. Taffarn Sink is a quite unique pub, as it is built, or at least clad, entirely in galvanised iron. The name of the place does translate as Zinc Pub. Situated in the Preseli Hills, in the Pembrokeshire National Park, in the hamlet of Rosebush, it was constructed as a hotel in 1876 to attract visitors to the area on the newly opened railway link from Clunderwent to Rosebush. The now neglected and disused line has been innovatively used to make a unique feature in the pub beer garden. As the weather improves slightly, we head for another tourist attraction on the River Typhy, Canarth Falls. They're quite attractive today, but apparently a spectacular sight when in full flood. To see the day out, we travel west down the Typhy to the ruins of Newid Emlyn Castle. Built in a bend of the Typhy River, Newid Emlyn Castle was principally designed as a country seat around 1240, and significantly was the only Welsh castle built of stone in this part of Wales. It did, however, see military action in the Civil War, and having been taken by Parliament, was blown up by gunpowder at the end of the struggle to make it indefensible. It has been in ruins and neglect ever since. Another day, more rain, and another castle, but first something a little more unusual, a water-driven mill. Not unusual, but in the case of Carew, with the power coming not from a river or leat, but water trapped when the tide turns. Built on a shallow inlet, a causeway was built, and when high tide was reached, the sluice gates were closed, trapping the receding water inside. Once the tide drops, the miller opens the sluice gates, allowing the water to escape via the water wheel, giving free power to drive the mill. With 2 high tides a day, the miller's working life was governed literally by the moon's influence on the tides. Once power was transmitted inside, the mill was much the same as mills throughout the country. Gears and levers, grinding stones and shoots, corn to grain and grain to flour, and then to the bakers.
On the far side of this wheel are a pair of cast iron level gears, and these lead to the grain chute seen on this floor, or horse as it's known, supporting the grain.
One difference I noticed in the grindstones to those of the West Country in particular was that the stones were of French construction, being faced with sections of quartz held in place with plaster and a metal band. Looking out of the mill window, we can see an imposing castle. This is Carew Castle, our next and final destination for this short break. Built on a low hill next to a navigable river, this castle occupies a site that has been popular right back to the Iron Age times. Today's ruins that we see shows us a grand structure that has evolved over the centuries from Norman times. It's gone through many metamorphoses, each grander than the former. Outside the castle was the village, and one caretaker of the castle was the flamboyant Sir John Perrott, said to have been the illegitimate son of Henry VIII. And so as not to spoil the view from his recently added 3-story Elizabethan wing with its huge windows, he had roads rerouted, moved the village, and evicted tenants whose farms spoiled his views. Not much different to today's route for HS2. That's our time here in Tenby finished. We've seen the sights and it's time to say goodbye, but we will be back.